This is a series that I've kind of selected from the whole body of awareness through movement lessons that we have, which are thousands of them. I've selected some of them that directly relate to some aspect of an asana. So for those of you who practice yoga, you'll recognize that as we move in and out and approach different shapes. And for those of you who are Feldenkrais practitioners, it's what you've done, and it's a selection of lessons that tend to lean a little bit towards the dynamic athletic side. That's possible in our human capacity for some of us at some time in our life. So as we proceed, I want those of you who are new to the method to have some kind of ground rules, we could say, to not do anything that's uncomfortable, move at your own pace. So sometimes if there's time to do many of each variation, you do just the dose that's right for you. And always kind of being guided in the direction of doing less, because it's a different kind of study, as we move inward and really pay attention to sensation, taking an accounting of our entire self in each action. So this series, I think you'll find a big variety of situations that tap into all of our capacities for movement and attention. Whether you're a practitioner of yoga or Feldenkrais, you'll find a lot of viable touch points along the way through the series. Please find your space and lie on your back. So fill up your space, have your legs long if that's comfortable for you. Find the distance apart that gives a sense of resting through the length of the legs. Arms alongside. You begin to find your way to stillness. Feeling that this process of settling is like a surrender of your weight to the floor. Through the length of the legs. The weight of the pelvis. And first settling in a way where you feel like the bones of your spine can move in the direction of the floor, and creating a little bit of distance between the pelvis and the head. Allow your shoulders to spread and move in the direction of the floor. And then once that stillness kind of settles, then turn your attention to the motion of your breathing. Bringing the air in through the nostrils. And imbue it already with kind of this sense of time, of no rush. There's plenty of time. So slow it down as you breathe in. And slowly as you exhale. And as you breathe in, think that there's a sense of direction of elongation. And from your tailbone all the way up to your head. To coax a little bit more, bit by bit, of this settling. And as you breathe in, find the feeling of where you widen, that direction of widening. Maybe a bit in the area of the waist, between the pelvis and the chest, and along the ribs. all the way under the arms. Just feel if there's a hint of widening possible. And look for the forward and back shaping in the breath. So the breastbone moving a little in the direction of the ceiling, the back of the spine moving a bit in the direction of the floor. Bit by bit. And now shift your attention to the contact that your legs make with the floor. Start with the feeling of the heels, the point of contact with the heels. Actively compare one side with the other. So there's a continual movement of your attention so that you can kind of gather and collect the distinctions of how you rest with the right heel and where the toes orient. And then compare it with the left side, the point of pressure on the back of the heel and the orientation of the toes on the left, the differences you feel. For many of us, they're not the same, and there's no drive to have symmetry. Our study is just to know what is, what presents. In this whole process of observing ourselves, getting to know ourselves better, without judging. And then track from the heel to the hip joint with each leg and feel the points of contact. Again, with that back and forth movement, right and left movement of the attention. So bit by bit, making the distinctions that emerge at the moment for you. And it's okay if nothing comes up at the moment. The inquiry is important. And then feeling at the level of the hip joints on each side of the pelvis. Maybe one side feels a little closer to the floor, that the way the musculature around the hip joint settles, that the bone, the deeper structure can come a little bit closer to the floor. Find a difference or differences. And then in the middle of the back of the pelvis, find the area of your sacrum where your spine joins the pelvis, and slowly move in the direction of your head, feeling the parts of your spine that are lifted away from the floor. For many, in the beginning particularly, you can feel in the small of the back that there's some space there, and just kind of get a gauge, take a guess how big that space is. And then as you move in the direction of your head, which vertebra do you feel make contact with the floor? And what kind of quality? Pressing hard or just a little bit? Compare the different regions. Find the area between the shoulder blades. Traveling all the way at the base of the neck and through the length of your neck. Take your time, and you can move up and down the spine, attending. And give yourself time and give yourself a feeling of length. Like there's an injecting of a little bit of space along the spine, between the vertebrae. And feeling the settling of the shoulders. Again, this act of comparing to build more and more of a kinesthetic vocabulary about your experience. Can be in words, it can be something that's not quite named. And then the resting of your head on the top of the spine. And then bend your knees and roll to your side and come up to side sitting and sit with your left leg bent back and the right one in front. So the left heel is a little bit close to the pelvis comfortably. Doesn't have to be right next to. And the sole of the right foot in relationship to the left knee. Bring the hands forward on the floor. And just pause for a moment. Kind of, get the feeling of where the base of support is. The right hip joint is outwardly rotated, the left one inwardly rotated. And just kind of feel how you settle. Find your breath. Again and again, find the breath. And now slowly begin to lengthen your arms forward and take your time and building up slowly. That's kind of the process we're involved with. So even if you could lie completely flat on the floor, take your time. How you organize the action. We're more about the how we do it than getting anywhere, any destination. So that's the approach for learning that differentiates us from other modalities. And in particular, talking about yoga, where there's often already a destination with a shape, but we're going to approach it to feel and have an accounting of all of the parts of yourself. So slide the arms a little bit forward and then return. Take your time. Keeping sight of comfort the whole way as you lengthen the arms. There's a folding at the hip joints. And the difference you feel, because each hip joint is in a different relation, inwardly, outwardly rotated. And then return, keep the breathing present in the action. Find your breath, and maybe there's a way that you've already landed on how to coordinate your breathing with the action. So experiment. If you're inhaling as you lengthen forward or exhaling, rest whenever you need to. Not necessary to do many, many variations. Important that you do them with a presence, with a fullness of attention. That's where the benefit comes. Feel how you fold over each hip joint and along the length of your torso. Where could you reduce the effort? Now, the next time that you come upright, pause for a moment. Reestablish the breathing again. And now continue lengthening the arms, but this time begin to lengthen your left leg backward simultaneously. So both directions, the arms going forward, the left leg sliding backward. Careful with the knee. So you have to organize it a bit with the friction. Take your time to get there, not in one go. Feel how you move your pelvis, adapting through the hip joints. The face of the left hip joint opening slowly, folding over the right. Take your time. Without interfering with the breathing. And as your leg is more and more like behind you and down like that, feel that it organizes from the hip joint. So it's not so much out to the left, but kind of straight down from the hip joint. Each variation, it's a spreading of the attention to bring more and more of yourself in the action. How you could make it easier. And that feeling of finding your leg elongated like this, where from the hip joint, that line from the hip joint. And then the face, the front of the left hip joint, coming towards the floor to the degree that's comfortable for you. The right leg stays folded. Feel the length of the spine. Good. And then let this go. Come rest on your back. Take some moments to find the stillness again, the quietness. And it's just been a few movements, but in the quietness, feel what emerges as something that feels a little different, or a part of yourself maybe that feels more present, enlivened. Maybe the floor is indicating something a little different. So take the opportunity in the rest to kind of check the experience, the aftermath of the movement. Reconnect with the breathing. Find an ease and softness in the throat so there's no squeezing or disturbance to the air as it comes in through the nostrils and along the back of the throat. And spreads through you, moving you sideways, forward and back in that elongating direction. Now bend your knees, roll to your side, come to sitting the opposite side. So with the right leg bent back, the left one in front, both hands in front of the left leg. On this side, slowly begin to lengthen like that. And bit by bit, as you lengthen just a tiny bit and then return and again, find your entire self in the action. So there's bit by bit this putting together and accounting for all the parts of ourselves in the action. So here now the right leg is inwardly rotated in the hip joint. The left one outwardly rotated. Yeah, maybe it's a whole different world. Make it easier. Just stay in a range that's comfortable for you. It grows into a larger movement. And for some of you, maybe you stay in a small range and just make that action, bring beauty to that action, an aesthetic that's pleasing to you. Again, notice how you coordinate with the breathing. Inhaling as you act, lengthening of the arms, or exhaling. Now slowly, the next time, begin to combine it, blend it with the lengthening of the right leg backward, downward, slowly, and not in one gulp, right? So you can take your time. find out how to make lightness, organize it so there's lightness in the right knee. You begin to slide it. And when you feel like, oh, when it starts to come at a certain length, that there's the knee will turn a little bit in relation to the floor, facing down with the kneecap, top of the foot coming to the floor. So there's that line. But, take your time to get there, find it, put all the parts together. Stay as low as you comfortably can, folding. Spread the action through the length of your back, torso, as the right hip joint opens. Yeah, the pelvis has to turn a little bit, right? So that the opening of the right hip joint, you can come and approach maybe towards the left foot, towards the floor, whatever works for you. Keep the neck soft, like how you organize all the way from the tailbone to your head. And if you find, at any point that somehow you've stopped breathing, turn your attention inward and feel like, oh, are you pushing? Are you moving too quickly? Because you have to give yourself time to have the expansion of your intention to include your whole self. We've got it down to the tips of the toes on the right side, the top of your head, and everything in between. And just check for yourself what feels different on this side. Not necessary to make it the same as the other side, but what appears on this side. You rest whenever you need to. Good. The next time that you come up, then bring yourself to lie on your back again and come to rest. And in that quietness again, the opportunity to connect with the feeling of yourself in contact with the floor, the impressions you have now, the weight, the quality of the weight. If it changed along the length of the legs in some way, the heels, where the heels rest, the toes point. Those are possible areas of change, or along the spine, the weightedness of the pelvis. But in your own way, look around and look for the surprises that can come from attending to ourselves in this way. Now come on up to sitting again, side sitting with the left leg back, the hands in front again. And lengthen your left leg back. And stay like that. You can take a few movements to get there, to be comfortable. Lean on the hands, take the hands where you can to be comfortable. And then with your left leg back, begin to turn your pelvis, turn yourself, so that the heel comes out to the left and the toes will point to the right. So there'll be a little movement in the ankle, and bit by bit, build it up so you feel it all the way into the hip joint. That as you turn the ankle and the toes to the right, maybe you feel it gathers your pelvis in a way to bring the front of the left hip joint even closer to the floor. What's comfortable for you? There's no need to achieve. The value is this finding yourself. Finding sensations through your whole self in this action, in this shape. Maybe for some of you, the front of the left hip joint comes a little bit closer to the right foot, towards the floor. Yeah. Give yourself time to adapt. Each hip joint doing something very different. Give yourself time to adapt. And tuning into the breath, let the breath guide the movement. If there's a halting or a choppiness to the breath, yeah, pause for a moment and change something about how you organize the action, the timing, the size. Good. Now pause and come and sit in a way that's comfortable. So take a rest in sitting. Choose your most comfortable sitting position. Yeah, this is a moment of rest. So you find what's the habit in sitting, your base of support in sitting, the feeling of the length of the spine from the base of support, your grounded seat, and the effect on your breath. You all come from different places, but we don't spend a lot of time, many of us, on the floor compared to some other cultures. And so the influence on our hip joints and the shaping through our back, it can be profound for some of us. So explore, like just change if you have your legs crossed, change them the other way, or legs long, something different, just to feel a different base of support and a different rising up of the spine and the influence on the breath. Good. Now come to side sitting with the right leg back, hands in front. Take your time to lengthen your right leg behind like that. Take a few movements to get there so that the front of the hip joint opens on the right side, the heel towards the ceiling. And then when you get there, you begin the movement of turning the ankle, the heel coming to the right, the toes to the left, and feel that it relates all the way up through the pelvis. Your torso helps, everything can help, so that the right leg can begin to turn a bit and be on the side even. Whatever works for you and is comfortable. You have to monitor your comfort. Yeah, with the breathing. And feel the difference on this side. The ability for your left hip joint to adapt, allow the movement of the pelvis. Good. Take your study slowly so that there's this hunt for qualities in this organization of yourself in action, the continuity of the breathing. And your choice, when you've had enough, you've had enough. You come to rest on your back. Everybody, please come rest on your back. Sensing and feeling your contact with the floor. and what the contact, the changing contact reveals. Your legs rest differently. Different settling of the bones along the length of your spine. If there's something new in the motion of your breathing, looking for animation along the length of your back as you breathe in and breathe out. Thinking of the directions forward, backward, sideways, widening. And length in the direction of the basin of the pelvis, all the way up to the ears. And now come up to sitting again with the left leg backward. Elongate it. Come onto your forearms and elbows. And again, find that line. So feeling from the hip joint all the way to the heel. The left leg elongated. Yeah, to the degree that's comfortable, and you're on your forearms supported. And now begin to flex your ankle so that you come to rest on the pads of the toes, and then lengthen again the ankle. So a few times, flex and extend, and feel that associated sensation to the knee and to the hip joint. And then the next time that your ankle is flexed and you're standing on the toes, like that position for running, find the weight towards the big toe and second toe, push a little bit, transmit a little bit of force so that your knee lifts a bit away, and then track that force to the hip joint. And then when it's received in the hip joint, find it through the length of the spine and all the way, lifting your head a little bit to have the eyes gaze up the wall. Yeah, a few times. And then you can soften the knee, and then again, so that it's a feeling of finding the power through the bones generated from this push with the foot, the toes, received in the knee, received in the hip, through the spine. And then lift your head. Shape yourself in your chest and back so that your head gets carried comfortably high. Take your time. Doesn't need to be big. But again, an accounting of all the parts of yourself with this force that's transmitted. Easy breathing. Find the bones. That's it. And then the muscles, bit by bit, interfere less and less with this transmission. So it's a unified feeling. Good. Come pause again. Come sit again. Find your comfort in sitting. Find your breath in sitting. Feeling of the sitting bones. The rising up of your spine to carry your head high. And then change over to the other side. So the right leg bent back, leaning on the forearms. Take your right leg long again. And here a few times flex and extend the ankle so that the heel lifts away from the floor. And checking out on this side, when you curl the toes under like this, If it comes immediately towards the big toe, second toe, or there's a little drifting to the little toe, but find the power of the big toe, second toe. And then when you're secure like that, with the breathing present, begin to push a little bit, lift the knee. Take your time to find the pathway to the bones of the leg, to the hip, uniting with the central column of your spine, and then at the end, lifting. Have your spine shape in a way so it's easier to lift your head. It's not a strain just in the neck, but supported through your whole torso. Easy breathing. And again, the feeling on this side, that comparison. What's different for you? And what's the same? If this leg, the connection of this leg in this kind of potent way of transmitting force is the same, clearer or less clear? Good. And then let this go. Come rest on your back. Sensing and feeling your contact with the floor. Hunting around for differences you notice. Can be in the contact with the floor is changing as you settle. Or a new awareness of different parts of yourself, how they compose in action. And then when you come to rest, there's a feeling of more of you present. It can be individual, what changes for each of us. We all start off in a different place, we have different habits, different shapes. It's just how we meet ourselves in the context of awareness through movement, connecting with ourselves in a deeper kinesthetic way, finding more and more this knowing of ourself. And come up to sitting again with your left leg backward. Leaning on your hands this time. Take your left leg back and bring it back up onto the toes. And begin to roll your left leg so that the heel comes to the left, the toes to the right. And now at this time, look over your right shoulder to the right to see the toes. Turn the pelvis, turn yourself, and then take the heel towards the ceiling and roll the other way so that you come to look to the left. The heel goes to the right, the toes to the left. Make it fully through the entire leg and the hip joint so the pelvis is gathered and rolls in an arc side to side. As you look over one shoulder, one side, find your breath. Yeah, let the breath inform your action. Shape through the torso. Now extend the ankle. So you're on the top of the foot, and same thing. Roll the whole leg, turn the pelvis, turn the shoulders, and then return in the other side. And stay as low as you can over the right hip joint. but there's an arc, a trajectory of an arc with the pelvis rolling, shoulders. Adapt as you need to. Take your time. Sometimes the adapting means move really, really slowly, and sometimes it means just imagining or visualizing the movement. Good. Come take a pause. Any pause you want. Lie on your back, sit, any position that's comfortable. Connect with your breathing. Feel where your breath goes, how it moves you in front and in back. Take the breath in the direction of the hip joints. So there's a fulsome lengthening. And then come up to sitting again, this time with the right leg bent back. Leaning on the hands, and lengthen your right leg back and come up onto the toes. And then begin to take the heel over to the right, the toes to the left. And looking left, turn your pelvis, every part of yourself helping. And now rolling and adapting over the left hip joint, so the arc of the pelvis. Make it comfortable for your knees, so you modify as you need to. The shoulders moving. So it's not just the foot moving, right? Think of the whole leg and united with the pelvis. And that from the tips of the toes to the top of your head, you get help throughout your whole self. And now extend the ankle and do a few movements with the top of the foot on the floor and the heel, and toes, going opposite direction, and feel it through the hip joint. And the motion of the pelvis, link it all together. The breathing in the background, the chest shape, collecting the information on this side. How's it different for you? Leave it, come onto your back and rest. That pathway again to finding the stillness. And in the background, fishing out the movement of the breath, elongating direction. The widening direction. And the direction that gives depth, the forward and back direction. And then come up to sitting again with your left leg bent back. And then coming onto the elbows, take the left leg all the way back in line with the hip joint. Now prop your chin in between your hands. So lift the hands away from the floor and support. The right hand comes to the right cheek, the left hand to the left cheek. Turn the left toes under for running. And here begin to push a little bit, lifting the knee. And then like this, feel it climb up through the spine. That's it. And then lower. And again. Find the breath. And you find your way, right? So, you do what's easy for you, modify where you need to. Easy breathing. Now pause, open the ankle. So extend. And now here, begin to roll your leg again, right and left with the heel. And without lifting the elbows, look towards one side and the other side. Slowly, slowly. So you feel keeping the elbows fixed, the request in the chest. Yeah, just do what you can. It's not important that everything is exact. Success is not achieving. It's the hunt for sensation, the hunt for your entire self in an action, and finding qualities and pleasure in organizing yourself. Good. Pause again. Come into a resting position, your choice. Finding if you're sitting, finding, if something's changing in the hip joints. The feeling of the seat, the support is more clear. Breathing in through the nostrils. Find the elongation. If you're sitting especially, find the elongation as you breathe in. Widening. And now come to the other side. So the right leg is bent back. Come onto your forearms. Elongate your right leg back. Prop up your chin. So lift your hands away. So you're just point on the tips of the elbows. And here begin to first flex the ankle. So the toes are for running. And then slowly develop that force again that is transmitted through the foot, through the bones of the leg, received in the torso, the entry at the hip joint, and then collect it through the spine, the chest, all the way to the head. Organize it with the breathing. Let that be the guide to finding how you put yourself into shapes, right? How you organize yourself into shape. Prioritize the breath. Now pause, extend the ankle, and slowly begin to roll your leg again with the heel pointing right, the toes opposite, and look without lifting the elbows. So that possibility of help from the shoulders, the chest. You just look in the direction. You don't have to see, but that's the direction to shape yourself with the breathing. Good. Find a way to organize it so the right leg is light, from the work of the torso, the pelvis, moves the leg. Good. And then leave this. Come onto your back and rest. So for many of you who are practitioners of yoga, you recognize this as a pigeon position, pose. And all the variations that help us approach it, coming in and out of it. The slowness that we give to this approach and awareness through movement of learning to find ourselves, compose an action with the entirety of ourself. So giving ourselves time to learn. And we find easier and easier ways to approach different shapes. And our nervous system is really attracted to this efficiency and ease. So when we take the time, we can begin to move in a way that brings us pleasure and harmonizes a shape and action through our entire self. Come on to sitting again with the left leg back. Lengthen the arms in front, lengthen the left leg back. So folding low like that. And here, yeah, as low as you can, let your neck be soft. And just pause for a moment, find yourself, your whole self in this shape. Like in yoga, there are often names of animals and symbolic and the intention of each shape that we get into. And now here, and this for some of you, you'll just approach this with what works for you. Begin to lift your left leg and lift your head. Stay low as you can. So without coming up on the right knee, yeah, you have to find a little lightness. I'm not saying it's easy. You find your way to make the leg a little lighter. Lift your head at the same time and shape your torso. Breathing. This is the challenge, to work with yourself with the breath. Your whole self. Find the shape in the spine, the chest. Arms long in front. Just the head can lift. Good. Now pause, change over the legs. So start with the right leg back. Lengthen the arms forward, low. And here, you find what's possible on this side. And again, it's not like one must achieve. Imagine the movement. Imagine the lightness of the right leg, helped through your whole self, right? What you do with your belly, chest, soft in the shoulders. Feel how it is on this side. Good. And just pause, just rest over the left leg as you can, breathing. Find a fulsome cycle of the breath. Inhale and exhale. And then come onto your back and rest. Kind of thinking, feeling back to the beginning of the lesson, arrangement of the legs at rest. Notice some changes in the contact the orientation of the toes, the musculature, the big, strong muscles that envelop the hip joints. There's been some change that's now reflected in how you rest. The quality of the contact. That's different from the beginning. And the sense of contact along the spine. So finding the backbones of the spine and their relationship to the floor. Spread of the shoulders. Anything different that you notice? Again, there may be vocabulary, there may be words, there may be just a knowing. And watch over the breathing. And any residual feelings or sense or thoughts of having been in these shapes, different places of yourself that you felt. And now bend your knees and slowly roll to your side, coming to sit, and then bringing yourself to stand. Keeping the breathing free. And still with this inward attention, stand for a moment comfortably. An easy distance between the feet where you feel balanced. You can find the toes, find the heels in contact with the floor. How the legs support the pelvis at that juncture with the hip joints and the torso, and how your pelvis is seated on the top of the legs, allowing for that length and rising up of the spine to carry your head high. Shift your weight a little bit side to side so you can, feel through the legs, from the heels to the hip joints to the top of the head. Good. And then walk around. Sense yourself in motion after the lesson. If anything jumps out at you, stride. Thank you for coming.